Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. This is a preview of the two heavyweight fights that are on the Matchroom Monaco card. One with Zhilie Zhang facing Andriy Rudenko, the other with Hughie Fury facing Pavel Sour. So what I'll do is I'll start with the Zhang and Rudenko fight first, because this is where the interest is for me. The other fight is not going to be nearly as competitive as this one. In Zhilie Zhang, you have an Olympic silver medalist from Beijing, the 2008 Games. He's turned pro all the way back in 2014, and he's amassed a record of 20-0, but really not much on the record, and it's kind of make or break at this point for his career, because he's 36 years old. He's not a young heavyweight anymore, and I'm a big believer that after the age of 35, a lot of heavyweights start to decline. Most heavyweights do their best work before the age of 35, so the clock is well and truly ticking on Zhilie Zhang. And in Andriy Rudenko, who himself is a late replacement opponent, Zhang's original opponent, Sergei Kuzmin, had to pull out injured, but Rudenko is still by far and away the best opponent that Zhilie Zhang would have ever faced in his career to date. So I know some people often think of late replacements and they think, oh, this will be easy work, but in this case, I'm not really so sure, because Rudenko is a cut above anything that he's ever really faced. And when you look at Zhang's record, and see here on screen, you have the likes of Don Hainsworth, Byron Poley, Nick Guivas, Curtis Harper. You know, it's just a slew of journeymen. Probably the best name on his record is further down from 2016, Rodney Hernandez, and in terms of you're 20-0, and that may be the best name of your record, and we can certainly debate who is the best name, but there's no clear standout opponent. So even though it's a late replacement in Rudenko, it is a step up. And in Andriy Rudenko, you have a guy who is currently 32 wins, 4 losses on the record. He's a smaller heavyweight at 6 foot. He's out of the Ukraine, also 36 years old. In recent years, he really hasn't been that active since 2017. This will be his 4th fight. In 2017, he fought Alexander Povetkin. He lost by decision. A lone fight in 2018, he won that against the journeyman, and he lost to Ajit Kabial earlier this year, also by decision. So in thinking about this fight and sort of picking who will win, it's a 10-round fight in Monaco. I'm pretty sure that this is going to go to a decision. Rudenko is a pretty durable sort of character, and Zhang, you know, he is a good boxer, but he isn't necessarily a massive power puncher. But I do think in winning this fight, because I am going to be picking Zhilie Zhang, I think that body punching is going to be a big part of it. I think Rudenko in recent years, and some of the recent fights, including the Kabial one, has shown he's a little bit vulnerable to the body, and that led to him being dropped in the Kabial fight, which was earlier in 2019. And for the purposes of review, here is actually just a little clip which is slowed down, and you can see Kabial working Rudenko to the body. He was backing him up and then landed a very nice body shot. He goes down, and body punching for Zhilie Zhang is actually a big part of his game. And his last fight, which was against Don Hainsworth, and this is in 2018, so he's been out of the ring for the best part of 14 months or so. Body punching was a very good part of that win over Hainsworth. But Rudenko, he is a step up, so maybe he will be able to sort of thwart some of what Zhang has been doing. But in terms of Zhang's trainer, Sean George, he said on social media, see here on screen, people don't see the blood, sweat and tears that goes into a training camp, the 5 a.m. run, the countless hours on the heavy bag, sharpening your skills in sparring, the hours of video study, communicating with each other so we're on the same page. Zhilie Big Bang Zhang, his nickname is Big Bang, is fight ready. If you're a fight fan, casual fight fan, or never watched boxing before, this is the fighter you want to watch. Catch Zhilie Zhang on DAZN this Saturday, yada yada yada. And Sean George, a very big believer in his fighter, but it is a little bit sort of a head scratcher to me why the inactivity, so much inactivity in Zhilie Zhang's career. And some of it I think comes down to promotional considerations, because he hasn't always been promoted by Matchroom. He signed on a co-promotional deal, but even since he joined Matchroom, he hasn't exactly been the most active. But this is going to be a moment for him to shine and sort of show the heavyweight division what he's really made of. And it's quite interesting because a year ago he was meant to be on the same card, but then he couldn't get a visa. There was some sort of issue with getting to Monaco, so he had to pull out, and that allowed Michael Hunter to go in there against Alexander Ustinov, and he was able to put on a good performance, and that helped, one of the fights that helped propel him more into the limelight. So Zhang needs to take the opportunity in this fight. He needs to fight well, he needs to look sharp, he needs to put himself into a position where fans go, I want to see him in another fight, as sort of a step above an Andriy Rudenko, who at this point in his career at 36 and 32 wins, 4 losses, he's a good sort of top 50-ish type of guy, but no more. So Zhang needs to sort of separate himself from Rudenko in this fight, and I do believe with his southpaw style and the body punching, I think he's going to make it awkward and difficult for Rudenko, who is, he's a decent heavyweight, but he's pretty rudimentary at the same time. So I am picking Zhilie Zhang to win this. I think it will be by decision, 10-round fight here. I think he might win it something like 7-3, something like that on the cards. We'll have to see. But with Zhang being 36 years old and inactive for the most part in the last year or so, maybe it's an opportunity for Rudenko to catch him at the right time. You can never rule anything out in heavyweight boxing. Sometimes it can just be one punch, but I do expect this will go the distance, the full 10 rounds, with Zhang being the winner. The other fight on the card, which is not as interesting as this one with Zhang and Rudenko, it's between Hughie Fury and Pavel Sour. Hughie Fury in the last 3 years has racked up a loss in each of those years. One against Joseph Parker in 2017, 2018 Kubrat Pulev, and then in 2019 against Alexander Povetkin. And in between times, it's kind of like he's had one lower level fight or, something like that, then all of a sudden been hoisted up to world level where he's fallen short. And I think, it sort of seems to be the further he goes into his career, it doesn't feel like he's developing. It doesn't feel like he's taking any of the lessons on board, and it sort of feels more like Hughie Fury in the way that he fights. It's feeling more laboured and confused about what he really wants to do. He seems betwixt and between about how he really wants to fight. So this fight in Monaco against Pavel Sour is an opportunity for Hughie Fury to actually show fans he's been working on things in the gym and he can execute them in the ring, because Sauer himself is not exactly a top heavyweight. Even though he's got an 11-2 resume, he really is a high-level journeyman, and that might offend a few people who believe he's sort of capable. But I mean, if you saw the recent fight against Jermaine Franklin, he didn't do much in that fight at all, and that was only back at the start of October, so a relatively short turnaround for Sauer. He was down a couple of times in that fight, but never really looked like troubling, the scorers in that one, because he just didn't do enough work. And ultimately, Franklin, I think, drew a little bit of criticism, including from myself, because it looked like there were opportunities for him to press the action and really take Sauer out, but he just wasn't able to do it. So it's sort of what I want to see in this fight is something in between that and then Sauer's performance against Filip Hrgović, because Hrgović took him out in a round, the heavyweight prospect Filip Hrgović. So when you consider it in that context, with the Franklin performance and the Hrgović, I mean, Hughie Fury is going to want to aim to put on a good performance here, show he's been actually, making some adjustments and not just throwing wide arcing right hands and not sort of, freezing in the ring and not getting his offense away, because in the Alexander Povetkin fight, it just sort of seemed like he just wasn't able to do much of anything, and especially in the second half of the fight. And his father, Peter Fury, has sort of, said a few things in recent days about Hughie Fury and his prospects for 2020, and sort of seems to be a case with Peter Fury. Like, I really respect his general overall commentary on the heavyweight division, but where it comes to his son Hughie, there definitely is a blind spot. Talking him up for a world heavyweight title shot in 2020, it's just not going to happen. He's nowhere near a title shot at this point. Even though he says he's with the right team and the right promotional banner with Matchroom, they can't parlay Hughie Fury into a title shot in 2020. Just not happening. But this is kind of like a step back towards a world world level fight, this one with Sauer. So he needs to go in there, look good, look sharp, have an authoritative right hand that, he uses judiciously, not just wide and arcing like he did in the Kubrat-Pulev fight. He needs to throw it, but when he does throw it, it needs to look, like it's actually an effective weapon, which against a guy like Pavel Sour, I think it could be, because he is there to be hit, as Jermaine Franklin showed. And I don't expect Sauer to, win this. Even if it goes to a decision, Hughie Fury is going to take this, but I think Fury may be able to stop Sauer late on in this fight. And bear in mind, it's a 10-round fight, so I think somewhere between 6 and 8 rounds, I think if he takes a battering and if Fury can get Sauer hurt, and if he can manage to pour it on in a way that Franklin couldn't, with sort of 1 or 2 punches from Franklin, and then he would just sort of stop. But if Fury can put it on him, I could see Sauer being stopped. He's not, indestructible. He's been knocked out before in a round, so if you hurt him, you can take him out, but you got to put it on him. And if Fury can get an impressive looking win, a knockout, that's going to help his stock, because right now it's in the toilet with fans. Fans aren't necessarily very high on Hughie Fury right now. And now at 25 years old, he needs to start showing that he is going in the right direction. Because at the moment, with some of the performances and the losses and the way that he's lost, he hasn't exactly covered himself in glory. And the Povetkin fight, make no mistake, that he didn't embarrass himself in that one. But he didn't really do enough to win either. And that seems to be part of his problem, because if you think about the Parker fight, the Pulev fight, and the Povetkin fight, he fought completely different in all three. And as I sort of mentioned, it seems like he doesn't really know how he needs to fight or can fight. And he seems to be, constantly shifting. And I don't know if he has actually been improving. And you can only sort of say, because he is 25 years old now, what's his ceiling? Because if he's not improving and he can't seem to sort of stick things together, how far can he go in the division? But this is an opportunity against Sauer to prove his detractors wrong. But what do you make of it all? Hughie Fury versus Pavel Sour and Zhilie Zhang versus Andriy Rudenko. Who are you picking and why? And if there is a stoppage, what round? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.